Good day, grade sevens. So from the previous lesson, we see now the vocabulary that we've learned that it will appear in this story. Here's the word blight, maladies, puzzled, stricken, stillness, and deserted. And just a little bit about the author who wrote this story from Silent Spring, which we see here. So even as a child, Rachel Carson wanted to be a writer. Once in college, she renewed her interest in nature and majored in marine biology. She later earned a master's degree in zoology. Carson had long been worried about the overuse of pesticides and wanted to raise awareness about this problem. So here we see the word pesticides. We'll come across it in the text and we'll explain what it means there. Her book Silent Spring became one of the most influential environmental texts ever written. So we see that this book, which Rachel Carson has written, and what we will read today is an excerpt of her book, or it's called a piece of a book. And here we see that it's related to our essential and main big question about planet Earth and about human beings taking care of it. So we will now move on to the next page where the text starts, which is page 363. So from Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. And I want you to please get your pen or highlighter ready so that we can annotate important information. Background. Pesticides are chemical compounds designed to destroy crop-eating insects. I'd like you to underline that, please, up until the word insects over there. Pesticides can be deadly to many species. Underline deadly to many species. So pesticides are chemical compounds that destroy crop-eating insects. So a lot of farmers use pesticides, and pesticides can be deadly to many species, including humans. In addition to the insects and other pests they are intended to kill. In 1962, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, which revealed to the public the dangers of DDT, a pesticide in wide use at the time. The awareness raised by Silent Spring eventually led the United States to ban DDT entirely in 1972. This excerpt comes from the opening pages of the book. So here we see that Rachel Carson is an author, but also a lady who stands up, who wants to fight for planet Earth and what it's all about, and taking care of planet Earth. There was once a town in the heart of America where all life seemed to live in harmony with its surroundings. The town lay in the midst of a checkerboard of prosperous farms, with fields of grain and hillsides of orchards, where, in spring, white clouds of bloom drifted above the green fields. Wow, we can even read that this author who has written this story, she is an amazing author. Let's look at how she describes the setting of where this is using such beautiful words. In autumn, oak and maple and birch set up a blaze of color that flamed and flickered across a backdrop of pines. Then foxes barked in the hills and deer silently crossed the fields, half hidden in the mists of the fall mornings. Fall means the winter mornings. So I just want to erase that quickly. And then I would like you to get your pen or highlighter ready so that we can annotate the following. This entire paragraph needs to be annotated. So here we see, along the roads, laurel are like bushes that come off from trees. Verbenum and alder, great ferns and wild flowers delighted the traveler's eye through much of the year. You see this? This is already highlighted for you. All those words and sentences that are highlighted, you need to annotate. Even in winter, the roadsides were places of beauty, where countless birds came to feed on the berries and on the seed heads of the dried weeds rising above the snow. And here, at this question here, where it says close read questions, it says annotate. In paragraph 2, mark details the author uses to describe the rich environment of the town. So it's a rich environment of the town because we can see how rich it is through the description of words. So let's continue. The countryside was, in fact, famous for the abundance and variety of its bird life. Again, where you see the highlighted versions, you may annotate. So this countryside, it was rich and it was abundant in bird life. It had a lot of different kinds of bird life. And when the flood of migrants was pouring through in spring, and fall people traveled from great distances to observe them, others came to fish the streams, which flowed clear and cold. Let's go down to the next page. And cold out of the hills and contained shady pools where trout lay. Trout is a type of fish. Okay, so that you will also annotate and underline. But before we move on, let's just go back. Part of the question was, why might the author have used such vivid descriptive details to describe the town? So this you should also answer over here in this space. And then your last question would be, what can you conclude about the town from these details? Let's quickly go up here. So here, why would the author include these details? Could be one of your possible answers. I think the author used these details to convey just how rich this area is in wildlife and natural resources, and to reinforce her first sentence, which says the town seemed to live in harmony with its surroundings. She may be setting up a before and after structure. So she's showing you how the town might have been before the disaster came, before it had been blighted, and how it is going to look afterwards. So she's trying to set up a before and after structure to show the reader how Earth and planet can actually get destroyed. And the last one, which is the conclude here, asks us, what can you conclude about the town from these details? These details tell me that this is an area of great beauty where wildlife is thriving, where wildlife has the ability to grow. Let's read on. So it had been from the days many years ago when the first settlers raised their houses, sank their wells, and built their barns. In this beauty, and here are our vocabulary words. Then a strange blight crept over the area and everything began to change. Here's the word blight. Blight means something that spoils, prevents growth, or destroys. So something came to destroy this beautiful surrounding. Some evil spell had settled on the community. Mysterious maladies or illnesses swept the flocks of chickens. The cattle and sheep sickened and died. Everywhere was a shadow of death. The farmers spoke of much illness among their families. In the town, the doctors had become more and more puzzled. They became confused by new kinds of sickness appearing among their patients. There had been several sudden and unexplained deaths. People couldn't explain why people and animals and plants were dying, not only among adults, but even among children who would be stricken. Stricken means affected suddenly while at play and die within a few hours. So everything that you see underlined or highlighted or annotated, you need to do the same, please. There was a strange stillness. There was absence, okay? The birds, for example. So once this blight crept over the area, there was a stillness. This blight came to destroy the life, the beautiful life that the author had depicted and described to us in the beginning of the story. And now we see the change starts to happen, okay? So the birds, for example, where had they gone? Many people spoke of them, puzzled and disturbed. The feeding stations in the backyards were deserted. The feeding stations in people's backyards were where birds could come and get food or water. The few birds seen anywhere were moribund. They trembled violently and could not fly. The birds became scared of this blight that had crept over the area. It was a spring without voices. Wow. You know, when you think of spring, spring is a season where the birds come out, where things start to grow again, when new life happens. But in this case, this spring had no singing voices of birds because the birds were scared. they were not seen. There was death over the land. There was illnesses. There were maladies. People were stricken with sicknesses. On the mornings that had once throbbed with the dawn chorus of robins. Now, dawn chorus means like a tune, a song, and robins are a kind of birds. So these birds were not singing anymore. Catbirds, doves, jays, wrens, and scores of other bird voices. There was now no sound. Only silence lay over the fields and woods and marsh. So everything there at this time was very silent. And we see how the author so beautifully describes the setting for us as the reader. Let me erase that for you. Okay, let's move on. On the farms, the hens brooded, but no chicks hatched. So there was no life on the farm, no chicks were hatching. The farmers complained that they were unable to raise any pigs. The litters were small, and the young survived only a few days. The apple trees were coming into bloom, but no bees droned among the blossoms, so there was no pollination and there would be no fruit. So no fruit was being grown, there was no pollination between bees. There was no life in this area at the time because of the blight and the illness and the disease that had so darkly come over the area. The roadsides, once so attractive, so the roadsides they described early in the story, it was attractive, meaning it was beautiful, were now lined with brown and withered vegetation as though swept by fire. So the beautiful greenery plants that there was before, the forest, the smell, the rain, the beautiful roadsides, it was now lined with brown and withered vegetation, meaning that there was no more green plants. It became brown. The trees looked tired. Okay? These too were silent, deserted by all living things. It was lonely, this place. Even the streams were now lifeless. They became lifeless. Streams are the flowing waters. Anglers no longer visited them, for all the fish had died. An angler is a fisherman. So they didn't even come to this area anymore because the fish had all died. In the gutters, under the eaves, and between the shingles of the roofs, a white granular powder still showed a few patches, some weeks before it had fallen like snow upon the roofs and the lawns, the fields and streams. And as we see previously on the previous page, that the writer actually structures the writing so beautifully because we see she describes the area or the town before and she's describing it now. And we see the major difference after the illness had crept over this area. No witchcraft, no enemy action had silenced the rebirth of new life in the stricken world. The people had done it themselves. See, this text is also teaching us and telling us that people are responsible for what's happening on the planet through pollution, through not taking care of natural resources, for destroying life. The people had done it themselves. This town does not actually exist, but it might easily have 1,000 counterparts in America or elsewhere in the world. Even today, if we look at what's happening in the world, human beings are responsible for all the pollution and the diseases out there because of the way some of us have decided to live. I know of no community that has experienced all the misfortunes I describe. Yet every one of these disasters has actually happened somewhere, and many real communities have already suffered a substantial number of them. Substantial means many of these things. A grim specter has crept upon us almost unnoticed, and this imagined tragedy may easily become a stark reality we all shall know. So the writer here and the author is also warning mankind to take care of the planet. Now, grade 7s, I want us to quickly have a look at your comprehension check questions. Number 1, what are two animals that attracted visitors to the town? Number 2, what happened to the animals and the people in the town? And number 3, what fell on the roofs, lawns, fields, and streams? And lastly, You need to write a brief summary of the excerpt from Silent Spring. Right, thank you, grade 7s. The activity, the questions after the comprehension will be for homework. Thank you so much, grade 7s.